Evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are finishing chapter 2 of book 3, which is the law of worship. We are finishing sacrifices. That is the subject we were doing last week, but we have two last questions on the chapter. I will ask Philip to start for us is question 672. Again, we are talking about sacrifices, which is the last item of law of worship. Okay, chapter 2, book 3. Okay.
Is offering the fruits of the earth more acceptable before God than sacrificing animals? I have already answered your question by saying that God judges the intention behind an action. Of course, offering the fruits of the earth is more acceptable than the blood of victims. As we have told you, and always repeat, a prayer from the heart is 100-fold more pleasing to God than all the offerings you could possibly make. The intention is everything, while the fact is nothing.
Yeah, we discussed last week sacrifices, which is something that we've been doing forever, right? Since the beginning of our evolution as human beings, because of fear. In the beginning, of fear of the unknown, fear of the things that were happening around us that we couldn't explain. Primitive people started offering things. Of course, I imagine that you made an offering, something happened, and you immediately conclude that because of the offering that the positive thing happened, right? Or the negative thing didn't happen. So we started with animals, we moved on to enemies, humans, always thinking of pleasing God. And we discussed last week that God, being perfect, nothing is going to change the natural law, because the natural law is perfect. So nothing is pleasing to God or unpleasant to God, because God is perfect and the natural law is perfect. So in the end, is how it reflects on our actions, reflects to ourselves. So that's why the Spirit here says, of course, offering the fruits of earth is more acceptable than the blood of victims, because you are causing less harm by offering vegetables than offering animals, or even worse, humans. But again, reinforcing here what we discussed last week and what the spirits told us, and we discussed the week before when we study prayers. A prayer from the heart is 100-fold more pleasing to God, meaning more effective to ourselves, to our evolutionary path, our vibrations, our connections with the superior spirits, than any offerings that you could possibly make. Because if you are going to make an offering, even if you're not causing any harm to anyone with the offering, but just place the thing there and then you move away, I've done my job. There's not much really effective in that, right? Because what is effective is when you connect from the heart with the spirituality. The intention is everything, while the fact or the act is really nothing, in the sense that it doesn't really make a difference. And again, I'm going to repeat what I said last week. Jesus told us, before placing things at the altar, go and reconcile with your enemy, because it's much more useful and efficient for ourselves to reconcile with our enemies, to not carry grudges on our return to the spiritual world. Because whatever we are offering to God or to a saint or to a spirit, in the end, is the intention. besides the intention, nothing really matters. Okay? Okay, last one.
673. Could these offerings be made more pleasing to God by using them to assist those who are poor and lack the necessities of life? In that case, couldn't the sacrificing of animals be considered commendable when accomplished for a useful purpose, have been more meritorious than an abusive sacrifice that served no useful end or benefit only those who lacked for nothing? Is there not something truly virtuous in setting aside the fruits of all that God has given us for the poor? God always blesses those who do good. To help the poor and those who are suffering is the best way to honor God. I do not mean to say that God disapproves of the ceremonies you use when you pray. However, a good deal of the money spent on these events can be better spent. God loves simplicity in all things. A person who attaches more importance to external matters than to the heart is narrow-minded. How could God attach more importance to the form than to the sentiment motivating your actions?
So, trying to interpret this in the sense that everything that we are doing is for the benefit of ourselves, the good actions. So, God always blesses those who do good. Every time we practice charity, we are doing good to ourselves. So we are in connection with the natural law, in agreement with the natural law. So we are being blessed by God, but not in the sense of that we imagine of a God as a person or an entity blessing us like we can be blessed in a church or something like that, right? But in the sense that we are aligning ourselves with the natural law. The best way to honor God or to help our own growth is to help the poor and those who are suffering. And then the Spirit said, it doesn't mean that doing ceremonies to pray, when they have the good intention behind that, and they serve a purpose, to attract people, to connect people, to reunite people with a sincere desire to learn and to evolve, which is in the end what we do here at the Spiritist Center. There's nothing wrong with that. But the spirits talk to us about simplicity, because if we are spending money that could be spent on helping those in need, we are misdirecting or using the money for something that's not as effective. Again, every time you are spending money on some ceremony, there are the people that you are paying to prepare for the ceremony. So you are benefiting people, because in the end, if money moves around, it's a good use of money. A bad use of money is to keep it under the mattress, right? So it is, there are different ways, better ways and not so good ways. But so spending a lot of money on lavish ceremonies is less effective than helping those in need. But again, I remember going to one of these fundraisings, which was in a beautiful place, full of things, shiny things, let's say. And I was talking to the organizer, and she told me, listen, we have to do that, because with this lavish place and things, we attract people that want to come to places like this, and then they are going to give more. If you do in a place that is a cheap place with cheap things, these people don't go. And then, the money you spend creating these lavish events, it's going to multiply much more than if you don't spend that money. And again, it tells us how limited we are in our evolution, right? Because these people only will give money if they are surrounded by good food, good drinks, and a good place. But it's where we are, right? So the understanding of where we are in terms of our evolutionary progress and what is needed to help those in need in a positive way, we should do what we can, right? So if that's what is needed to raise more money to help those poor, those in need, then it's money well spent, let's say, right? Now, of course, they say here a person who attaches more importance to external matters than to the heart is narrow-minded. A lot of people are still give more importance to the external than to internal, right? Those people go to this place to donate because they want to show to others that they are helping. So it's an external act. It's not really because they want to do it, because they are not yet prepared to do don't let your right hand know what your left hand do. But it's already better than not giving anything. It's we have to understand that someone that is using their money to make the economy moves to help others, even it's for just to show, it's better than though there are those that have a lot of money and don't give anything, use only on them and in their own wealth. So again, we have to understand, study the whole picture, and each one is going to be judged by their own conscience, right? When we go back to the spiritual world, we're going to look at our actions, and we're going to reflect eventually, not necessarily immediately, but eventually, we're going to look back and see the shortcomings that we had and we all have in our lives, that where we could have done better, and then we'll ask for another opportunity to come and try to do better next time. So again, everything relates to our connection with the spirituality, our intention. It's the sentiment motivating the action, not the act itself, as it said in the previous question. Okay? Questions, comments here? We're moving to the second law now. Okay? First was law of worship. Now, law of labor, which is chapter 3. Okay? Go ahead, Philip.
674. Is the necessity of labor a law of nature? Labor is a law of nature and is proved by the fact that it is a necessity. Civilization requires humankind to perform a greater amount of labor because it increases the sum of their needs and pleasures.
Read the next one, because it's important.
675. Should we understand labor to mean only occupations of material nature? No. The spirit labors just like the body. Every sort of useful occupation is labor.
Okay, I asked Philip to read the second one because that's the main definition that we have to keep in mind when we are studying the law of labor is every sort of useful occupation is labor. So, labor is a natural law. We need to work. Now, we have to understand the concept of work as anything that is helping us grow morally and intellectually, morally or intellectually. So when you are working hard to survive, right? You are learning something. You are evolving. It's an evolutionary path. If you look at human evolution from the ancient times, when we started civilization, right, as nomads, moving from one way to another, trying just to survive, living on instincts. Then we moved to learn agriculture, which was a huge step forward. So what are we doing in agriculture? We're working. It is a lot of physical work at that stage of evolution because we don't really have much capacity for intellectual evolution. We are learning because we're learning to plant, we're learning to harvest, all the things. But the moral evolution is very limited, and the intellectual evolution is also very limited. But it is a process. We have to start somewhere. We are created simple and ignorant, so we have to evolve. So as we become more and more evolved, and we see this more and more these days, and we're going to talk about this, we are working more with the mind and less with our physical body, right? So I don't know what's the division nowadays in terms of the world population of the workers, how many work physically and how many work mentally, right? With the sitting in their desks. But it's a big part of the population in the world already. It's working more mentally than physically. And we are growing intellectually, and with that, we are at our stage of evolution, we can work for our moral improvement also, right? Because in terms of helping others and being of assistance to others, it is work. Everything that we are doing for our moral and intellectual evolution is work, is labor. Every useful occupation is labor. Again, useful being the key word here. We can go into the discussions of what is useful and what is not, but what is useful to some people may not be useful to other people. Maybe some people, are learning a lot by doing things that other people doing the same thing wouldn't learn much for different reasons. So we shouldn't be rushing into judging the different types of things we do nowadays for leisure, because there is a lot of criticisms for different types of leisure that we do nowadays, right? Because there is always opportunities to learn. Of course, there is a lot of wasting opportunities to learn also, or wasting opportunities to evolve. But like we mentioned many times, even if you are not making any effort to make any progress, you are at least learning that that's not the right way to move forward. So eventually you look back and you are going to regret the wasted opportunities, the wasted time. So it's important, this concept, because what we have in general terms, if you go outside and ask someone, what is work, what is labor, it's something you do to get paid, to be remunerated, right? And we need to go beyond this concept, right? Every time you are sitting reading a book that is helping you learn something, this is labor. Every time you are watching something on the TV that you are learning from, history or anything, you are learning, you are working, right? Of course, at our stage of evolution, we need to work to survive. So we need to provide for our families, for ourselves. We need to get paid. But if we look to the spiritual world, right? when we talk about, for instance, No Solar, the governor of No Solar that says he's working for 200 years, right? He's not getting paid because there is no pay in the spiritual world. And he doesn't take vacations because when you work for something that you like to do, you don't stop and you don't need vacations, right? There is a famous phrase, I don't remember by whom, that said, do what you work on what you like, and you never have to work one day in your life, right? Which is, in the end, it is our objective, right? To reach a point that we are going to be working because it's part of who you are, part of our nature. We're not there yet, we're far from it yet, but the understanding that that's the objective is already a good first step, okay? Right? Yes.
Do you work to sleep, like when you're sleeping?
Yes, because we go to the spiritual world, right? The question is, do we work when we are sleeping? The same way that here, sometimes you are there watching TV and not, it's not really work because you're watching a program that you're learning almost nothing from it. You can go to the spiritual world and be in places that you are not doing anything very useful, or you can go and watch some interact with good spirits and receive good guidance and inspiration, or you can be connected to less evolved spirits and being not doing anything very useful. So yes, you can do both. Every night when you go to sleep, you go to the spiritual world. That's something that we learn in Spiritism. Now, where do you go? Depends on your own vibration, right? Most of us do not go very far from our physical body because all our interests are around there. We are not looking for something more spiritual, elevated. Of course, we are studying Spiritism. We are curious about these things, so we have more opportunities to have these experiences in the spiritual world. But that's also why the spirits tells us to prepare ourselves when you go to sleep, because if you go to sleep very concerned about something material, you're not going to go very far, because it's where you are connected, right? So the prayer before going to sleep, right? The elevating your vibrations, read a good book, read something enlightened, will help you go to places in the spiritual world where you have an opportunity to learn. And every time you are learning, you are working, right? The concept of labor here encompasses any occupation that is helping you grow morally or intellectually, okay?
$6.76.
Yeah.
Why is labor forced upon humankind? It is a consequence of your physical nature. It is an atonement and means of developing your intelligence. Without labor, you would remain in the early stages of intelligence. This is why your food, safety, and well-being all rely entirely on your labor and activity. Those whose bodies are too weak for tougher kinds of work are granted intelligence by God to compensate for it, but it is labor nonetheless.
Labor is forced upon humankind because we are not evolved spirits, right? We are spirits that still are looking for the easy way out. If everything is given to us, we're not going to make any effort. We, in general, right? There are exceptions, of course. But we, at our stage of evolution, we humankind, we still want to get by with the least effort, right? So that's why we need to work. And that's why the majority of humankind still needs to work, because if everything was provided to us, we wouldn't make much of an effort, right? The story of Adam and Eve, right? That they were expelled from paradise. In the end, if you look at the interpretation of humankind, when they were in paradise, they were living in paradise, not doing anything, right? So what happened there? They were not evolving, really, because they were not making any effort. So for them to evolve, they had to leave paradise, right? Of course, the story is the temptation and the apple and everything, which is a fantasy. But in the end, if you look at humankind, our history, evolutionary history, we need to work, right? Because still very few of us work because they like to work. There are many that already do that, right? We see outside people that work because they like to work. But let's say you go to the more evolved countries in the world, a country like Finland, for instance, right? The majority of people there have everything that government that they need, government provides, they work, but you'll find those there that live on the government without making any good, because, you know, they are still not evolved enough to understand the necessity that we have to work. What's going to happen to them? Next incarnation, they will come to a place that they will have to face these challenges. So, you know, at this stage of evolution, you can see that we are already moving, because we already have some countries in the world that the majority of the population is provided everything and still works, still do their part, and still help the progress. So that's where we're going to get. But we're still far from it. We're still at a place that the majority of us need to have the carrot in front of us to go after and to work. Because if the carrot was provided to us, we wouldn't make any effort. Again, we're getting there. And then the spirits mentioned here, those whose bodies are too weak for tougher kinds of work are granted intelligence by God. Remember, in the middle of the 19th century, the work was, everything was labor work. All the work was labor, right? The people that owned the lands, and they were the nobles, they didn't work. The others worked for them, right? And we see how this ended up. But, you know, when I was reading this, I was thinking of Steve Hawkins, right? Completely dependable on others for him to live, but his intelligence, his mental work never stopped until the end, right? And he left a great work for us. So again, we're moving forward.
Well, when I was reading this, I remember that at the time of Karda, the factories were a lot of labor intensive
Yes.
production.
Yeah.
Now everything, you just press a button and the machine does everything.
It's all.
But so it was much more.
Yeah, but you see,
physical work.
yeah, you see how interesting it is, right? Because every time you have this progress, you have people screaming that, oh, this is going to cause unemployment, and this is, you know, I remember when the robots start replacing people in the auto industry, right? They said it's going to cause a big unemployment. Yes, it did. People moved to services, right? There's no more unemployment now than it was there. Actually, there was more there. So we're talking now about artificial intelligence, saying that, oh, it's going to eliminate a lot of works. True, but it's not going to eliminate, and there's nothing in its place. There will be different things. Of course, we couldn't imagine 30 years ago, how the workforce would be today. So we don't know how it's going to be 30 years from now. We know that it's going to be different because the law is of progress. We're going to get to the law of progress. But more and more, the work is going to be mental and less physical. Even when you go to agriculture, right? Farms, right? A lot of the farms are everything is done by machines nowadays, right? You have people driving the machines, but they're not doing any physical labor. They're driving the machines.
The remote control.
Yeah, sometimes with remote control. So you can see that it is progress, right? Of course, progress always causes problems because it creates difficulties that we are not prepared to deal with. So you have if in the end of the 19th century, when the population started to grow, there was the theory that we wouldn't have enough food for the growth of the population. What do we have today? We have more food than needed. We have an inefficient distribution system, right? That's why you still have people dying from hunger. But it's not for lack of food, it's lack of efficient distribution. So the problems we think that are going to be a problem very soon may not be a problem because the law is of progress. Our role in this is to learn and to adapt as much as we can. Of course, it's difficult as the progress goes faster, and as we get older, it's difficult for us to adapt to new things that are happening all the time. But it was difficult for our grandparents, it was difficult for our parents, and it was going to be difficult for our children when they grow old. So it's part of the law of progress, right? But if we resist progress, then we are causing harm to ourselves. Progress is going to happen. We like it or not like it. So we have to choose in which side of progress we stay, right? With progress or against progress. If we stay against, progress will happen and we are going to cause difficulties for ourselves, but it will happen, right? Okay. Yes, Danny.
So I teach high school, right? So 9 and 10th grades. The moment you give them the computer to use as a tool to do their work, their brains shut down. It's like they copy everything. So to make this youth, which is the youth that is getting the revolution of the AI right on the wave, right? Because we are from a different generation, so we know differently. They don't. They're learning on the go, right? As young children or as young adults, more or less. So he talks about labor, and you were saying that it's not only the physical, it's thinking, is questioning, learning. So it's scary. I know you were talking about progress and stuff, but it's scary because the moment they have, now they're using AI, they don't even have to Google anymore. It's just open ChatGPT, copy and paste, and get the answer. It's for me, who I'm from another generation, it's not pretty, but for them, it's part of it. Like, why I'm going to think if I just copy and paste and the computer gives me the answer.
So the challenge for the educators today is what to do with it. It's the reality. So how you deal with reality. And I actually, we were talking about this before the class here. Maybe we'll go back to paper and pen, and then they have to write their own answers in paper. Yes, I was reading today about someone that asked an essay that won the competition in one small town in the interior. That the guy that won the essay, the student, the essay was completely done by AI, right? So he won $1,000, and they were questioning, shouldn't he give back the money because he used the AI? And the answer is we have to teach moral and ethics, right? Because with moral and ethics is the only way that they are going to learn how to learn. They need to learn how to learn. How can we help? The reality is that AI exists, that they can do their homeworks using AI without making any effort. So how we move from that to giving them the opportunity to learn in different ways? I don't think we know the answer, but we will have to learn, right? I remember things from my youth that my parents would tell me, how you could do this or could do that, and we used to do. And my parents never had a cell phone. They didn't want a cell phone. They refused to use cell phones to the end of their lives. Everybody's using cell phones nowadays, and we are dealing with how to deal with that, how to use, including classrooms, right? New York now, you're not allowed to have cell phones in the classrooms. But we are experimenting, and some things are going to work, some things are not going to work, but there are no such thing as lost generations. It's just different generations, and we have to learn how we can be useful to them, and how they can be useful to us, so we can move on, right? I saw this last Sunday. They had every last Sunday of the month they have this meeting between the Spiritist youth throughout the world, right? They had 40 youth there reunited through Zoom, studying Spiritism in 3 different languages. And they were all interested in learning, right? They're not using AI. They are there to learn, to discuss. So it is there. There is something there. Now, maybe they are going to be the ones that are going to tell us how it should be. I don't know the answer, Danny, but what I know is that studying Spiritism and studying the law of progress as a natural law, we are going to progress. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to lose some people along the way that are not going to be able to follow the progress or learn. But, it's the progress, right? Errors, learning from errors, making different. But your question, I don't envy you as a teacher in high school today, how to deal with that, because I don't think we have the answers. So, you have to learn as you go, right? Good luck with that. Right?
Well, I also see like the technology is moving us from the physical labor, so we can better focus and develop our moral, right?
Yes. But in the same way that people are interested in their moral evolvement, it's still the minority, right?
Yes.
The majority wants to use it. Going back to why labor is still necessary, want to use it to get away with it, to move to not having to do much, right?
Yeah.
So
To be on the couch the whole day.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, but we are going to learn from that. We're going to change, right? I see people saying, "Oh, when I was a kid, we used to play outside the whole time because there was nothing inside for us to do, so we had to go outside." Nowadays, people stay in front of the children stay in front of video games and TV all the time. They don't go outside. That's true, but that's a reality. It's not complaining is not going to improve anything. What can we do to it's not sending them outside, forcing them to stay outside, that's going to solve the problem. It's a more complicated issue, right? Because we live in society, so we have to use what society provides to us unless we want to live in isolation. So everybody is living in this world, so how can we adapt to this world, right? We have people, it's people that grew with video games, let's say, right? That are 35 or even 40, 30, 35, 40. They're going out there, they're running, they are doing exercises, they are doing, they are athletes. So the fact that, we have these is just other challenges. We will always have challenges as we evolve. How we're going to deal with it, it's a learning process.
Without the challenge, we will not.
Yeah, exactly, right? Okay. You're on mute, Philip, if you want to unmute. Thanks.
677. Why does nature itself provide for all the wants of animals? Everything in nature labors. The animals work as much as you do, but their work, like their intelligence, is limited to providing for their own survival. This is why labor does not lead to progress in animals. While among human beings, it has a double purpose of preserving the body and developing thought, which is also necessary and continually raises them to a higher level. When I say that the labor of animals is limited to their survival, I mean that this is their purpose in working. They unconsciously support the views of the Creator when they provide for their material needs. Their labor contributes to nature's final end, although you often fail to realize its immediate result.
Here, the spirits talk about animals, but we can go even to before animals. Plants. Plants are working, right? They're working to grow. They are grabbing food from the soil, transforming it, photosynthesis, and transforming nutrients and growing. So everything works in nature, right? Animals worked for their own survival, which is based on their instinct, right? Instinct. You see animals that have to survive with their own food, chase other animals, provide for their forgot the word now. The animal, the little animals they produce. The puppies or whatever it's called, forgot the word. But until a certain point, and then they go by themselves and survive by themselves, right? The humans are the ones that take longer to be allowed to be able to live by themselves. But it's everything is work. So in that sense, what the spirits are trying to tell us is everything is labor, right? Everything in nature labors. So to think that we don't need to work is to go against the natural law. The natural law the law of work is one of the natural laws, and so it's part of our growth. And what we were just discussing with what Danny was saying, right? How do we deal with the difficulties that we have nowadays with youth? It is work. That's work. There are people that are actively thinking about solutions and how to deal with these problems. Are we going to get to the best solutions? No, but we are going to get solutions. Eventually, we're going to move on with solutions. Offsprings. Thanks, Danny. Yes, that was the word missing. Offsprings. Animals and their offsprings. Yes, couldn't get to that word. And so, you know, if we, it's like the word love, right? That we need to amplify to embrace everything that is for the help of others, to embrace others. Labor, we have to amplify here to mean everything we do for our moral and intellectual progress, right? And even when we are doing something wrong, we are working because we are going to learn eventually that what we did wrong was not the best path. So we are going to correct ourselves eventually one day, maybe in a different incarnation, but eventually we will.
No, I was trying to find the question, but long time ago we saw a question that even the corals, when they reproduce, they grow and then they form islands. I cannot quite remember. I'm just trying to find. But they are working.
Yeah.
They don't know what they are doing. They don't know what they are forming, but they're still.
Yeah, if you go to the minerals, right?
Yeah. The minerals,
What they are doing, they are learning the aggregation and disaggregation. That's the beginning of the spiritual principle, right? Aggregate and disaggregate. It's work in the end, right? Everything that is in motion is working, right? But of course, it's our physical body is working all the time, right? We have billions and billions of cells here that are working all the time, and they are all going to become one day individual spirits. But nowadays, there are billions of billions working inside of us, but they're working, right? Okay.
678.
Yeah.
In more advanced worlds, are human beings subjected to the same requirement to work? The nature of labor is always relative to wants. The less material those wants, the less material the labor. It is erroneous to think that human beings in those worlds are inactive and useless, since idleness would be torture rather than luxury.
Yes, again, we discussed that a little bit when we talked about the governor of Nosular, right? Working for 200 years. The more we evolve, the more and we are seeing this, the less material the wants, the less material the labor. So we are trying to evolve intellectually and morally. Less and less we need to do physical labor. But again, this we do a lot of exercise today, right? We learn a lot about exercise, the requirement people of doing exercise. We didn't have this in the past, right? Why? Because we had physical labor all the time, right? We could not exercise because we were working the farm the whole day, right? And people that didn't work, the nobility, they had all the problems related to not doing anything, which was, gout and all these diseases that are a reflection of doing nothing. So as we evolve, the more and more the word work will lose the meaning of something that we are forced to do to move to something that it's not that we want to do, that we do because it's part of who we are. You cannot think another way, right? The governor of Nosular, going back to, it's not that he wants to be the governor of Nosular, he is. He works because it's part of who he is, right? It doesn't require him to make any effort to do it. It's part of who he is. Of course, it's difficult for us to understand because it's difficult for us to understand spirits more evolved than us, right? We can understand the ones less evolved than us because we were there one day. But the more evolved is difficult. So the part that it's something that belongs to you, it's part of you, not something, the move from the need, from the want to the no need, no want, but just who you are. the concept is still difficult for us to understand, but that's where we're going to get, you know. Idleness, we know that we don't need to read here, right? Idleness is a torture for us today, right? People that when they retire, if they don't have something to do that they like, some things that they want to do, some focus on their lives, they go downhill very fast, and they, you know, they lose their will to live very fast. So it is important for us to focus on our interests in doing things to continue our evolutionary journey, right? Of course, you know, I remember this spiritist that he was the head in Boston, the head of the spiritist group in Boston. He returned to the spiritual world like 10 years ago. And I remember once he said, the true spiritist never retires. Because there is always something to learn. There is always something to study. There is always something for you to improve yourself morally, intellectually, right? Because, you know, if you stop trying to learn, it's a problem, right?
João, an example that you like to use a lot is Mother Teresa.
Yes.
Helping the poor and the sick was just part of who she is.
Was, yeah.
Who she was.
Well,
she is. To me, she is.
Yeah.
It's not right. So for her, it's not a work. It was not kind of sacrifice. She did what she did because that's the way, right?
You think of Chico Xavier, right? The work that he did. He started working there after he retired, because he worked as a public servant, public worker, right? And then he used to arrive at the center in the morning and work until 2 a.m., right? Sitting there, working all the time. And you look at him and how could
3 or 4 hours of sleep every day.
Every day,
That's it.
right? And you think, how could he do it? And it's just who he is, right? For us, it's difficult to understand that. For us, it's difficult to, because we're not there, and because it's something above our level of evolution. For us, we admire, which is already because before admiring, there are people that say, they're crazy, and they don't think about it. No, we are already at the level that we admire. We would like to be there, but we are not there. We're far from there yet. But at least we are already in the admiration phase, which is good. Yeah. Okay, let's read one more.
679. Are there individuals who possess enough worldly goods for survival to render them exempt from the law of labor? Perhaps from material labor, but not from the obligation of making themselves useful according to their means and developing their own intelligence and that of others, which is also labor. There are individuals to whom God has granted sufficient means that are not restricted to earning their income by the sweat of their brows. In that case, their obligation of being useful to their fellow beings is all the greater because they have at their disposal a much greater amount of free time for doing good.
Okay, so again, here we're talking about the so-called privileged people that don't need to work, right? And what the spirits are telling is that they have received an opportunity to use their time to help and assist others. God has granted means not to earn their income by the sweat of their brows. Their obligation of being useful to their fellow beings is all the greater because they have at their disposal a much greater amount of free time. Again, it's The Spirit says it's as difficult as to not have anything, right? To have to fight for your survival every day, because the distractions of having everything, the temptations are much greater. And you see how many people get lost because they have everything. You see how many youth people, that their parents give them everything, they end up falling by the way through drugs, drinking, or other things, because they don't know how to make themselves useful. They have this opportunity, they don't know how to use it, they don't have the drive to use it. So it is a challenge, but it is an opportunity. Every time that you have those, enough means that you don't need to work for your survival. You need to dedicate that time to help your brothers and sisters in need. A smaller part of those are doing that today, but you will more and more grow. You have more and more wealthy individuals helping others a lot. It could be just to show off, but even to show off, it's already a start, right? You have some very wealthy individuals helping others because they want to, they sincerely want to, and that's part of who they already are. So we're going to get there. It takes some time. Okay.
Ron, this question quickly comes I might not know how to say that in English, but the trial of the being rich and wealthy.
Trial of the riches.
Yeah, it's much harder, right?
Yeah.
Comes to this question.
Yeah, they say it's as much harder as to be absolutely poor.
Yeah,
because the extremes are always difficult, because when you are absolutely poor, right, you don't have time to focus on anything other than survival, and the survival occupies your whole time. I remember watching this documentary about some people that live in the forest, I think it was a tribe in Brazil, right? That the whole day were spending trying to hunt and to find food for the tribe to survive. There's nothing else. The only thing they did was wake up, go to the forest, hunt, come back, eat, go back, hunt. So it's survival. It's very instinctive. It's very primitive. That's the reality, right? It's difficult. So when we go past that, we have some opportunity to learn more. Okay. All right. There are 2 questions left to finish next week. And then we're going to talk about rest also. Right. So for this weekend, what we have is Saturday, we have a talk by Leonardo Vieira from Baltimore. He's going to talk about the parable of the barren fig tree, right? If you remember, Jesus was walking, and then he went to a fig tree that was not producing anything, and he said, he kind of cursed the tree, which was not really what he did. But so if you want to know more about it, you see him. You watch the talk on Saturday. So the following Saturday, on the 20th, September 20th, we have the 19th U.S. Spiritist Symposium in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The subject is the evolution of consciousness, a path towards enlightenment. It's going to be a whole day event from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can watch it live on spiritismsymposium.org. Okay, we are going to send the information on our email. So this is Saturday, following Saturday, the 20th. On Sunday, which is the second Sunday of the month, we are going to study the book Jesus in the Home. Okay. The book club next Wednesday is chapter 18 of the book Light in the Dark, A Light in the Darkness by Joana de Angelis and Divaldo Franco. Okay, Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Oh, yes, certainly. Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting, John. And Philip, thank you for reading for us this evening. And all who are here, we thank you for participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together again for our studies of the Spirit's book, Book 3, Chapter 2, regarding sacrifices, and Chapter 3, the Law of Labor. Prayers from the heart are beneficial offerings because intention is the primary key. Fruits from the earth are blessed, especially if it assists others who are in need. True sentiments and ceremonies can also be beneficial, hopefully those which are given beyond frivolous external show. According to natural law, every sort of useful occupation is labor, which assists the body and the spirit to progress. We need to apply effort and work to move forward. We live in society and not in isolation. The labor of animals and plants is for survival and growth, and is the outpicturing of the Creator as well. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritus centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we remind ourselves now to be beacons of light as we go forward. May we have this love, light, peace, and service and charity in mind, which is actually love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.